Hello, Ming. How are you?
Hello, Sonia. I am well. I'm absolutely delighted to speak to you. I feel like I know you and I don't because I follow you so much and I read a lot and I listen to a lot of what you write and talk about. So there's a familiarity even though we've never met.
It's such a pleasure. So, if people know me and follow me, they know I'm absolutely obsessed with Ming's jewelry. So, that's why I really wanted to have Ming Lamson on our podcast. In the first seasons, we talked a lot about estate jewelry, vintage jewelry. We talked about jewelry history. And in this season, I wanted to actually meet the designers behind these pieces that are becoming collectible. And these pieces that are really outstanding and have a lasting value and are creating a lot of buzz around them for all the good reasons. So Ming has a new collection called Origins. It's going to be unveiled by the time this podcast comes out. It will just be unveiled in New York. So
Yes.
tell us about the story of this new collection. It's your fourth collection, and each collection has a story. So what is the story of Origins?
Each collection has a story because I like to design with the collections in a very different way from how I design for commissions. I'd like to give my collections a story because I enjoy the investigative nature of designing for a collection. And the story behind Origins was I was very fascinated and inspired by the earliest forms of jewelry. In the age where we question why we wear jewelry, what is the purpose or the reason almost why we would buy it, why we would wear it. And for that, I found that I wanted to really go back just to the origins of jewelry as human adornment. And I was fascinated by the idea that you could pick up a pebble or a shell and string it on you. How you could almost weave threads to become something that you put on, and how that turned to beads or pearls, what it was worn for. Was it just adornment? Was it for treasure? Was it for trade? Was it sort of honor the sun, the moon, the stars? And all of that kind of came into this collection. But I didn't want the pieces to be representative of those things. It was just more, how can I explore those ideas in what I make?
And how did it start? Was there something specific that started this reflection on the origin of jewelry in your specific creative journey?
It was more really, I guess, I've been designing and making jewelry for 25 years, and I made my first ring actually 30 years ago as a teenager. And you really start at a point in your career, question why you do what you do, why you make. And I love the history of jewelry, but I really wanted to take it right back for my own investigations.
I understand. And the exhibition of this collection will take place at Stephen Russell in New York. And it's in collaboration also with Vivarium. So, how did this collaboration came about? And also, you're a London-based jeweler, so it was important for you to show first in New York.
So there's a few different answers in that. The collaboration came about because of Vivian Becker, who I hugely admire as a jewelry historian. I'm very interested in the art form, obviously the history of jewelry, the art form of jewelry. We become completely obsessed by it. Anybody who's around gemstones, you can't not. You fall so head over heels and deeply in love with jewelry, with stones, with the craft, with the technical thing. And Vivian's incredibly knowledgeable about the history of jewelry, and she's been very supportive. She loves my work, and she took me to Gem Genève years ago and presented me there. And I really respect her knowledge and views on jewelry. She introduced me to Stephen and Russell, who have a wonderful collection of vintage and antique. Interesting, they've got Alexander Calder, they've got Old Van Cleef, they've got Belle Perron, they've got Old Tiffany. And when you have an opportunity to stand alongside such incredible, inspiring heritage pieces, it's not something you're going to turn down.
Of course. So tell us a bit more about some of the pieces you're bringing to New York from this collection. I know you said the pebble was very important to you for the more ancient ornaments. So tell us just a few of the pieces that people are going to be lucky to discover in New York.
Yes. So it was, a lot of it started with the concept of the pebble, and then loads of things grew from that. And it was exploring early, very, very early stones that were used, be it jade, amber, pearls. And from there, the collection started to grow, almost from a carving out of jade in a certain shape. And from there, it spiraled into other ideas of carved chalcedony, star rubies, star sapphires, using opaque materials in a way that I like, where they're offset by faceted materials, and the juxtaposition between the two, and trying to explore these themes in a very modern fine jewelry way that didn't feel at all like, I quite like somebody to pick up a piece and wouldn't even know that that's the inspiration. Like the pieces shouldn't in any way suggest that. They are my own thoughts and experiments and drawings, and I draw and draw and draw. And the initial idea becomes so changed by the time I finish the piece. But that's just kind of for me. And if somebody asks me, I'm delighted to share it. But actually, the piece exists on its own. The piece at the end should always honor the stone. So we're so lucky to use gemstones from the earth. And I always feel like I'm trying to make a house or a throne that honors the stone. So whatever the concept is, I want to honor what kind of has come out of the earth in a way that sets it off to its best nature. And so from that spiraled into star sapphire, moonstones, yellow beryls, things that were represented the sun, the moon, the cosmos, the stars, but using shapes from my early explorations of jade pebbles, amber pebbles, that then translated into these later materials. So when you see the collection as a whole, this journey can be carried through. But when you see the individual pieces, you might not think, where does that relate back to origins? Where is the threads and the fringes connected to the initial idea of pebbles and weavings?
That sounds fascinating. We'll share some pictures with our audience on the website as well, so they can see a bit more what we're talking about. But imagine a little bit, even I'm sure it's going to be surprising. And to talk about your origin story, that's a well-known story
Yes.
that 25 years ago, you received a bag of gemstones in Jaipur, in India,
Yes.
that started your
Yes.
journey, your personal journey.
Yes.
How do you see
Yes.
this evolution from this Jaipur revelation, if I can say it this
Yes.
way, or
Yes.
a complete love story to this collection now that you created, this fourth collection?
Yes, it's a really good question. I mean, I think that it has been a hell of a journey, because you start with beads. I've never worked for somebody, and I've very much sort of had to train myself. I guess the thing with the beads has been, it started me with an obsession of gemstones. But alongside that obsession with gemstones, which is consistent the entire way through, and it seems to get stronger and stronger, I keep thinking, well, but you can never see all the stones, and you can never not be moved and excited when you hold incredible stones. And I think it's always like, how can I make a better piece for that stone? And how can I show people how amazing these stones are? And, I get still incredibly excited by the gemstones. But alongside that has been actually what I hadn't realized when I was much, much younger, was a real love of kind of technical difficulties and tools and construction and creation, which, I had to keep training myself in, as long as working with the stones was actually training to be a jeweler, learning about, I started in Jaipur with a kerosene lamp and a tube to solder, and now we use lasers, and it feels so far apart, but it actually is part of the journey. And then at the basis behind both of those things is my love of drawing, and that I just want to make things. And that's been from a child, just constantly making things out of paper, out of Fimo, out of clay, so those three things have come together. But it's been quite a long journey, because you have to experiment. If nobody in your family or any of your history is in making jewelry, I had to work out, did I want to work in silver? Did I want to sell to shops? Why was I choosing item by item versus making many of a piece? And for that journey, I had to try and then learn why I didn't. I've always felt a guiding principle that jewelry is our treasure. And so therefore, for me, I never wanted to mass produce, not only because it kind of put me in front of a computer much more and took me away from just sitting and drawing, but also because I don't think we need masses of jewelry each. We need few pieces of very finely considered made jewelry, not just in terms of us as individuals, but for us, for the planet, for all sorts of reasons. I believe in very carefully considered items that we own in life. But it was quite a journey.
It's beautiful to see that. And I think that's something I've always enjoyed and appreciated in your approach to jewelry and your jewelry philosophy is the sustainability of it. You just mentioned we don't need to mass produce. There's a thoughtfulness and mindfulness that goes into creating your jewelry. And how do you implement it? How do you discuss it with your private clients? Because I know it's something that's very dear to you. How is it important to them as well? Do they come to you because of this? How do you work with these private collectors and try to really apply this idea of, sustainable long-term jewelry?
It's such a complicated subject, and I never want to, I can't claim to be extremely sustainable. I can only claim to be trying to work at it. But I do think we all want to feel really good about what we wear, and we want to feel very respectful to what the journey has been of the gold, of the stone, of the construction, and who that impacts, be it in a human level or a planet level. And I know anybody I would talk about wants to feel, it sounds a bit hippie, but the spirit of the piece must feel good. Not just, it's not a commodity. And so therefore we want to make sure we respect the artisanal miners, the gold miners, the gemstone miners, the cutters, and how we can feel good about that. And so anybody who you discuss that with would agree, I feel.
Do you bring it up with your private clients, or it's just something that comes organically as the process goes and you explain the sourcing of the gemstones and the sourcing of the gold and the artisans?
Yes, I don't want to preach to anybody, and I don't want to tell anybody. If somebody asks me, I'll explain super clearly what I believe, and if I have the chance to bring that into the discussions, but I don't want it to be something that dictates a design, or that somebody feels that their views might be different, or it's just something I believe in, so I feel I can put it into the pieces.
And how has it changed the role of the private jeweler? Because you've never worked for another house, you've always been your own private jeweler. How has this job changed, you see, over the last 20 years? To work with clients, do you see the demands being a bit different? Do you see collaboration has evolved with new clients? They want something different, they want new types of jewelry. How does that happen?
I feel that people are really starting to respect the idea of having the only one in the world, of one piece handmade, which 20 years ago we lived in a more quick mass, gold was very cheap, and there was a slightly different view that I'm starting to jewelry and how I felt about jewelry than is now. I don't know if you'd agree with me, Sonia, but I feel that people are coming round to really respecting the crafts of goldsmiths or even tailors or whatever it is versus mass production. And people love to have something that's just for them, that they're the only one, because I say to people, that's their piece for their story. And when it gets handed down, or even if it gets sold, it's got something of them about it. And I think people are really coming round to what makes them as an individual, and design and jewelry comes along with that. Would you agree?
Completely. Yeah, we use the word personalization so much in jewelry,
Yes.
but it used to be just you just have the choice between two stones, and that's personalization. I
Yes.
think it has really
Yes.
evolved into you really create your personal jewelry in collaboration with the artist. I see it more and more, and the success of jewelers coming on the scene today, I think is very linked to the fact that they offer this personal, I'm going to tell your story in this tiny, tiny piece of jewelry, or a bit bigger, but still.
Exactly. And I feel like I had a client say to me once, it feels like my armor to the world. And that concept is very, very interesting. But it's also why collections are important, because with a private commission, it's not so much about me. It's about me trying to use my expertise and my design to capture something of that person. But with a collection, you're trying to use your expertise and your design to create a piece of art based on your own thoughts and ideas and explorations. And it's a very, very different way of designing. And one is not more important than the other, but both are incredibly enjoyable. And I do find that both inspire the other, because the way you would start in a kind of research and design journey for a collection is very much how I would start in a research and design journey for a commission. and being sort of so one-on-one about how people wear jewelry. Is it comfortable? Is it fluid? Is it part of them? Is it starting from a point of being part of them? Also informs my collection pieces very much. And so it's important to me to have both going on.
I see, I see. And I think that's very nice that it's your fourth collection. So it's not like for you, it's very special, actually. I know they're all imbued with, a lot of personal stories as well. So
You
there's
kind of
something
have to start with yourself. Otherwise, I think as any artist is only going to be most true if they start from their own viewpoint.
Absolutely. So if you had to do a retrospective of your work, not just launch this new collection, Origins, which of the pieces you've created in the past 20 years you would like to put in this Ming retrospective?
Oh, it's interesting because I always feel like a tiny piece of myself is in each of these collection pieces. You go through such sort of tears but joy, and there's always the most difficult pieces are often the pieces that I feel so fond of but kind of emotional about, because sometimes in making a one of a kind piece, you make it so many times in order for it to appear in its final form. It's sometimes difficult for people to understand how many times you might carve something and then it breaks, or because you're pushing techniques, or you make the model and then it doesn't hang right, or it doesn't sit right, or it doesn't balance right. And a lot of good design is just about balance. You can have the same design, but if it's not constructed exactly right, the balance is just off. It's flat, or it's heavy, or it's not weightless or easy feeling, or it just doesn't have the right, I go back to balance. And often in the pieces that I'm most proud of or feel so fondly about, it's because they've been very, very technically difficult. And I've been very frustrated, but then had the complete joy of when we finally break through. They're also pieces that I'm proud of because maybe there was a pivot in my whole design points from then on, or they've gone to a home that I'm incredibly proud of. So there's definitely pieces from each collection that play into that, where they've changed and they've led to a lot of designs from that point. And I can send you pictures and an explanation where they are, but using historical techniques or using historical references, but in a very, very modern way, I always really enjoy. And where I showcase stones that make you see them hopefully in new eyes, things that I search to improve about myself and then showcase.
Are there do you see certain stones appearing or having a more prominent place in this imaginary showcase?
Yes, I think, I love all stones and I try to work with an incredibly wide range of stones because I want people to share in the joy of what stones are out there. There would be some jade pieces, I think, from my history of living in Hong Kong as a child, but also sort of what would be considered Ayurvedic stones from times of working in India, where they're sapphires and chrysoberyl cat's eye, which maybe in Europe people aren't so familiar with, but are very important in Asia. I love all sapphires, but I love really unusually colored sapphires, which people don't get the chance to see in a lot of shops, maybe. Unusual coloured tourmalines, where I have collected stones and matched them. There was a watermelon tourmaline bracelet that I really collected to try and colour match. There's some Siberian amethyst that I found from a dealer that was closing his whole office down, and they were in his personal collection. And there's a colour, the mines are, you don't really mine Siberian amethyst now, but they're really pink. And I combined them with turquoise, and the pink pulled out of the purple in the amethyst and the turquoise. And it was just the one made the other stone more special. And that's very exciting when you manage to create that.
Wow, I can already imagine a beautiful showcase of your work. That's happening, Ming.
Thank you, Sonia. So kind.
I want this to happen. And tell me, who else would you put next to your work? Well, the other artist, it doesn't have to be jewelry. It could be any type of artist that you think you have a dialogue in your creative mind that you would like to showcase alongside your own work.
If you were able to have an imaginary museum, you'd want to put in the people that inspire you and that you feel like you want to honor, but along with other artists. I mean, in terms of the jewelry world, there's artists who inspire me from their technical abilities, incredible technical abilities. You know, modern artists like Giovanni Covova and Lean Hain and people like that who are doing incredible technical things with metal. Andrew Lamb comes to mind. But then there are old artists who, like Louis Cartier, who just can't fail to inspire you, or Jar or Viren Baggett, these names that just are so incredible in their ability to have balance and use of gemstones. In terms of more sculptors and artists, it would always go back to Matisse and Giacometti and some of these people who would take color or form and shape and explore them and explore them and explore them. I could go on and on. There's an artist called Hervin Anderson, who's a painter who I just think is incredible. There's really many.
So until we get to this, but it will happen, how can people see Origins in New York? What are the dates and how can they see after that the collection and meet you and get to know you?
So Origins is on show in the Stephen Russell Gallery, which is on 76th and Madison Avenue in the Upper East Side. And it's going to be on display in that gallery from the 25th of October to the 28th of October. Every day in a selling exhibition that showcases my work and some of Stephen Russell's incredible vintage collection in one of the cases alongside.
And after that, if people can't go to New York and want to meet you and want to work with you, collectors, connoisseurs, how can they get hold of you?
In my own gallery in Notting Hill Gate in London. My gallery is 108 Talbot Road, and my workshop's underneath the gallery. Everything is made here in the workshop underneath in London. And that's the only place that I showcase the work. But anybody can just ring the bell and come in. It's not even an appointment-only gallery. I very much like to see the jewels on people, to meet people myself. So we have it always on display here in London. But it's the first time I'll show it, apart from in Geneva, it's the first time I'll show it in New York.
Which is very exciting. And also, obviously, people can follow you on Instagram. Your account is Ming Jewelry.
Ming Jewelry London.
Ming Jewelry, English spelling, London. We'll share all the details in the article that comes with this podcast. But I think if you haven't seen a piece by Ming before, you're just going to fall in love.
Oh, Sonia, that's incredibly kind words.
No, and I'm so happy we had the opportunity to explore a little bit more your process, the new collection Origins, what you would put in your ideal retrospective of Ming. First 20 years and maybe the next ones.
Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you so much, Ming, for this wonderful conversation. And if you want to listen to more podcasts from our previous seasons, we have all of them on the podcast platforms. And if you want to find out a bit more about Ming, we also have a lovely interview on Jewelry Connoisseur. So look up for Ming and you'll have the opportunity to read a bit more about a previous collection of hers. And also you'll have this podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Google, and Spotify. I think I haven't forgotten anything. So you can really find us in a lot of places, but I would encourage you, if you are in New York, to go and see for these 3 days this beautiful display, and anytime to ring the bell in Notting Hill to Ming's workshop.
Thank you so much.